Hey everyone, it's Philip with the Everyday Fighter podcast, where we share the stories and insights of everyday fighters just like you. Today we're talking with Ryan Cragg. He is a licensed clinical counselor, specializing in working with teenage boys and young men to help them get past any of the anger issues they might be going through. Growing up himself as a kind of very angry youth, he kind of describes how he kind of made his way through that, eventually finding his way to jiu-jitsu. He is now a blue belt in BJJ, and kind of shares how he found his way to that and how it's not only helped him in his own personal challenges and growth, but also where he finds that it's appropriate to suggest that as an option for his own young clients. But before we get into that interview, I wanted to get into our episode spotlight. As a reminder, our episode spotlights are not sponsored. These folks have no idea who I am or, pretty much who this, what this podcast is. But I just think it's a good thing. Typically, I'll find some folks that are doing what I feel is great work, but probably just need a little bit more light shed on them. And today, I wanted to talk about Rocksteady Boxing. Now, this is a nonprofit organization that works specifically with people that have been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And what they do is work with these folks, teaching them boxing, getting them active. And they found that they're able to significantly improve the symptoms of Parkinson's disease with them. You see on their website some of the before and after stories, and it's just remarkable what they're able to do. And I recommend that you check them out. You just got to go to rocksteadyboxing.org. That is our episode spotlight. Let's jump into our interview with Ryan Cragg.
From Tampa, Florida, born and raised. And I grew up, I struggled with a lot of anger and depression and probably some anxiety as well. Just really a lack of confidence and a lot of fear. I remember not wanting to get into any conflict or anything like that. So it seemed like all throughout high school, that was a big issue. And it was weird because I had a good number of friends. So I didn't have any, I guess, real reason to feel like that. But that was just the reality of it, and kind of in my own little hell for a lot of that time. And then I played sports. I was pretty good physically. I was a pretty good athlete. Mentally, not good at all. And I think that probably also contributed to the struggles. So after high school, I did what I thought everybody was supposed to do and tried to go the college route. And I was terrible. I was never a good student. I wasn't like I never failed. But I was never honor roll or anything. I was literally middle of the road. And so when I went to college, I bombed out. I think I was on probation immediately and dropped out, and figured I would just get a job and just kind of do that thing. And but I was still just very unhappy. I think probably still the depression, all that, the anger, and just lost and looking for stuff. And I remember somewhere around probably about my sophomore year of high school, I convinced my mom to buy me a punching bag. And because I did not want to be afraid anymore. And I felt like if I at least had a bag and knew how to swing, then, if worse came to worse, then I would be able to do that, even though if anything would have happened, I probably would have run and not even tried to deal with it. But I think that was the first foray into any type of combatives, any type of, I don't even know if we put boxing into martial arts.
All of that, man. All of that.
You know, I always think of the Muay Thai and kickboxing, things like that. But yeah, so that was my first foray. So fast forward, I go back to school after dropping out, and I really only determined that I was going to get the easiest degree I could, because that would mean that I could at least get a decent job, and whatever that meant. I didn't even know what that meant. So I went and I got my undergrad in sports management from the University of Florida. Came home, went right into sales, and I was terrible, but somehow became a sales trainer, and then started my own a publishing and marketing business, and started traveling all over. But I was still very, very struggling with depression, and just was really out of control, because now I had a little bit of money and still all the problems. And so then that was around 25. Then around 27, we had to close the business, and I was in Mobile, Alabama when I found out, and I was still living in Tampa, but I was in Mobile on a job. Found out from my partners that we had to close the business. Drove over to Atlanta, and told my dad, who my dad wasn't a part of my life very much, and but told him. And he introduced me to someone who introduced me to someone. Long story short, before I knew it, I was in grad school somehow. I think I literally was on my knees begging to go to the school in Atlanta, and went there. I was a psychology major, I think, for one semester of my probationary period, which was really my whole undergrad. But absolutely loved this school. And it was a school in Atlanta called Richmont Graduate. And I drove back home to Tampa, and I told my mom, listen, hey, I'm going to go try this out. So I'm moving to Atlanta, and I'll see you later. And moved up there, and then started, I got my master's, and then went immediately into working in residential group homes for kids who were abused, and did that for a while. And now I'm in private practice, and I focus on teen boys and young men and performance psychology, specifically because those were my teen years were some of my roughest years personally. And then as a young adult, that was also a very difficult time for me. So that's why I really focus on those two groups, that population. And then the performance psychology, just because I was always an athlete, and I always wanted my own personal hurdles. I wanted to help other people not struggle with those as well. So I've been in, the field of mental health and doing psychotherapy for the last 15 years. So, yeah.
So let me back up a little bit, dude, because you talk about, it's like,
yeah, it was a long.
No worries, yeah. Man. I mean, there's a lot of places we can talk, but like, I want to go back to this bit here, because that's a big deal, asking for a punching bag. I mean, I have one of my buddies now who's just starting boxing.
Yeah.
And I remember when I got my bag as mid-20s as an adult, and it was a big deal for me. It wasn't one where you go, it's okay, you go to the gym, then that's there. No, but this is mine. And for me, it was very different, because we had a treadmill. I bought my own treadmill, but it wasn't the same feeling as when I bought my bag.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mine, I can still remember it. Gosh. And even, so we just went home. My parents still live in Tampa, and we were just there a few months ago, and I went out to the garage to see if it was still in there, but it's not. But I remember exactly where it was hanging. I didn't even have wraps. I was so naive. I just had gloves, and really it was more about, it was more about when I was in that place, when I was pissed off or just not feeling well. I'm just going to go beat the hell out of the bag for a little bit. And I think it probably helped a little bit, but yeah, that was the first experience I had with anything. And then since I always played soccer, and now this was just a punching bag, not a Muay Thai bag. Yeah. I have a Muay Thai bag now. So this was probably, I don't know, 70 pounds. I mean, it wasn't huge, but then I started playing soccer. The kicking aspect came pretty easily. And yeah, so I would just go out there and beat the crap out of it and get wore out and come back inside.
So did you have any lessons? Did you?
No.
I mean, no.
It was the only lessons were rage and maybe what I saw on The Last Dragon or something.
The Last Dragon. Show enough.
Yeah, show enough.
Dude. So let me if you don't mind, let's talk about that a little bit. Because you talk about, and I'm just thinking of, and you've got this affinity, very strong affinity to, young men and boys, and you were coming from this place. Was it home life? Were you bullied? Where was this rage that you're talking about, where you needed this physical outlet? Where do you know where that came from now? Or
I don't know that I can put my thumb on exactly where it came from. My mom is the greatest person I've ever met. Truly, I mean, my wife will say the same thing, and I don't know that I can point to one thing and say it was because of this. I just remember always, it was just my mom and I, she worked a lot, but I just remember always just having this feeling. And I never grew up going, I want siblings. You meet a lot of people who are only children, and that's a big thing. They'll say they want siblings, or when they have kids, they want a bunch of kids. I wasn't like that. I remember always feeling less than, always feeling like I wasn't smart enough, very insecure. Yeah, I mean, I got bullied, but I don't know that it was any more or any less than anybody else. I think one of the things that I had on my side, which was helped out, was actually sports, because I was, like I said, I was pretty good in sports. So I think that could help out. But then I think the inadequacies off of the field are probably what really contributed to the self-esteem issues and the depression and the anger. And again, I didn't grow up fighting or anything like that. So there was always this fear of confrontation. Once I got on the field, I could kind of fight through those because there was a level of arrogance, but there was no confidence. So I could get away with it on the field and be all right. But God forbid I met one of those people outside of it probably would have been all over for me. But yeah, so that was pretty much my foray. And like I said, the bag was just an outlet. It was more just about, can I beat the crap out of it? And then God forbid, if I ever had to, maybe I could be able to do that against somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, it's interesting what you talk about as far as on the field versus off, particularly in terms of sports. And of course we can attribute, talk in this metaphor about, martial arts as well. But for me, when I think about being, on the mat, in the ring, in the dojo, particularly in a competitive type environment, right? You're going for points, or you're going for, time and, judges and that type of thing, or I haven't really been knocking out anyone, but that is a fairly controlled environment. There are very specific rules, very specific players who have their roles. And when you make a move, you make changes, you immediately get feedback. It's immediate feedback there. Whether you're playing tennis or whether you're punching somebody in the face, is it moving you closer to your goal or not? Outside of the ring, off the field, not as clear cut.
No. And I grew up, I remember seeing just some wicked fights. And I was always, it was that one of those things where it scared me, but I couldn't look away at the same time. I'd be scared that something would happen where I would somehow get involved. But at the same time, there was a pull to it. And even now, my wife says that I'm addicted to UFC and those types of things. I really enjoy liking it or watching it. But I think there still is a twinge of anxiousness, but I see it a lot differently now. I see it as an art. I see the craftsmanship, the thought process, and I think, quite honestly, that's part of the appeal of why I like working with athletes. I love to work with them and work through some of those personal challenges, those anxieties, those fears, because martial arts, in a lot of ways, is some of the most profound ways to address your own insecurities and anxieties, and so I'm really fascinated by it.
I don't think everyone would necessarily agree. And the reason I say that is because I've heard it. Mm-hmm. That letting your boy just release that rage, mm-hmm. whether luckily it's not on a living being.
Yeah.
But yet it's still letting that outlet, even on an inanimate object. And I think for some people, particularly if it's such that they're disconnected from that part of their evolution for one reason mm-hmm. or another, I think mm-hmm. it's very easy to get that disconnection in how we're living these days, right?
Yes.
We talk about, where do you get your food? Well, we get it from the grocery store. We don't actually go out and get it. So, millions of years of evolution, that's just part of us already. Yet there is this reaction for people that may see something like that for the first time, particularly if it's a teenage boy and they're just going to town on this bag. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts about that? I mean, as far as where that might be coming from. The second, is that something that's worth exploring in terms of, well, maybe you should have found a different outlet other than violence? Sure.
So for sake of transparency, let me say that since that time, I've done some Muay Thai, some kickboxing, and now I'm a blue belt in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. One of the things that in my office, I have a jiu-jitsu magazine sitting right there on purpose, because I think that martial arts in general just can do just an unbelievable work in somebody. That being said, I've had a number of parents come and talk to me, if I'm working with their kid and say, do I invest? My son seems angry. Do I invest in a punching bag? Is that a good outlet for him? And I really take it on a case by case. It's not always black and white. It's not, yes, always do this. But I think that given the personality, the structure of the family, kind of the mental makeup of the family, it can be a tremendous outlet. We've got a lot of our boys who are, and particularly boys that don't have a male role figure in their lives, who struggle with what does it mean to be a man and those types of things. So a lot of them end up either turning it inward and, destroying themselves, or go out and try to beat the crap out of anybody and everybody, this air of, superiority, power and control and confidence. And so that's why I say I really take it on a case by case, because not all the people that I see would I recommend that it would be a good outlet, just the boxing portion of it. Now I do have one that I said immediately, I think that this person should do it because I think that it would be a good outlet for them. And sure enough, it has turned out to be a good outlet, and has been a way for them to blow off steam and not, take it out on somebody else.
So it's not necessarily just, well, get over it. That's just part of them. Let's let boys be boys and go. It's really, you really got to bring it down to, well, let's see what's going on with this person mm-hmm. and their environment to see if this might even be an option.
Yes. Yeah. But at the same time, I think that, at our core, we're hunters and gatherers, right? That's who we are. And on some level, we look at aggression, controlled, directed aggression as all bad, or, and I don't look at it that way at all, because I think that controlled aggression is very worthwhile. I think that, one of the things, and I'll say this for my son, it's a huge thing for me to be a part of his life and teach him what it means to be a man, because knowing how I grew up and knowing that I always struggled with having a clear understanding or belief of what that meant or what it looked like, it's important for me. So I'm going to, in essence, let him push the boundaries a little bit, or I have, in regards to, like, he's aggressive on the field, and he's been aggressive playing sports, and I like that. Now, hurting people, I'm not for at all, but I also don't. I want him to have an air of belief in himself, and that he can take care of himself if need be. It doesn't mean that you're not afraid of things, but I feel like I'm being able to help formulate that in him, and so I take great pride in that. And I want him to be the type of person that is assertive, and that's where things like martial arts can come in and help somebody with that.
So with your boy, is he just in sports right now? Is he in martial arts now?
Yes. Well, so he's played soccer and he's playing baseball right now. But then we got him into karate at a local place. And quite honestly, there was a Groupon, so it was like 3 classes. But he's hit with me, actually, both him and my daughter. When I'm down hitting on the bag, they'll come down, and so I'll teach them a few things. And they very much enjoy that. Yeah. But I think for me, what I will do is I will push, if I can push them one direction, it will be towards jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Where did you get introduced to it? Okay.
So grew up in Tampa, moved to Atlanta. We were in Georgia. I was in Georgia for 10 years. In my second year of grad school, I met my wife and we got married, and then we bounced around. And then we moved to Savannah, and then we moved to California for work. And we lived in Long Beach, and which is, for those who don't know, is right next to Torrance. And I started looking into like Krav Maga a little bit, and then a little bit of jiu-jitsu, but quite truthfully, we just didn't have the money, and I couldn't do it. And
but this was your first time, actually, since just going on your own on your bag as a teenager. This now in Long Beach is now you're actually actively looking for some sort of martial arts.
Yes. So, and that was more about also probably, looking at my own stuff, my own insecurities. I had worked through a lot of stuff at that point, but actively looking for something to get into, because also for the community aspect, moving. So I've moved 10 times since I was 27. I'm 43 now. So, you're always starting over with your community, and that's a great way to start with your community. So we're out there for 3 years. Then we move here to Kansas City, and again for work. And once again, we're starting over again. And now I get into training Muay Thai and kickboxing at a gym, and doing a lot of that, and absolutely loving it. Loving striking. I hadn't done it because we lived in an apartment in California, so I couldn't bring my bag there. So really got into that. And they had jiu-jitsu there, but it wasn't organized. It was very it was a lot of guys that were trying to get into the UFC or tournaments, and that's fine. But there wasn't as much of the actual learning and education piece, which I was really looking for. So, ironically, I just happened upon a place that was about a mile from my house, and it turned out to be a Gracie. I can't remember the name of what they call it, but it's Gracie Combatives is what it is. And so I just walked in there, and immediately after the first session was I loved it. I mean, I was going 4 days a week for the first year, solidly. And then probably about 8 months in, started rolling, and just then absolutely fell in love with that piece of it. And and then just kept at it. And I go about 3 days a week now, and got my blue belt. And I've just never done something that for me was so analogous to life in general, because, the whole jujitsu thing, the first, I don't know, few years, at least for me as somebody in my early 40s, you're not very successful very often. And it's just about continuing to show up, because it was so analogous to life. It was so analogous to the clients that I work with. And that's what absolutely at the deepest, at my core, I had never found anything so fascinating like that, where in the past, had I faced something like that, I was not successful, I would have quit. I did not have the mental makeup to push through that, because again, you think about it, you're going every day and you're getting smashed by all sizes of people, and
but couldn't you, you played other sports before.
Yeah.
Right. So what was it, like football and
I played soccer, basketball, and tennis.
Okay. So, those things, particularly in the beginning with all those, there's a bit of a grind.
Yes.
As well. Why did you seek out martial arts and not those things that you were already familiar with, that you'd had some success with?
Yeah. I think I got burnt out. I was going to go play soccer in college, and I had played since I was, I don't know, 4 probably, competitively for a long time, and I just got burnt out. And I literally I think I played a little bit at my early 20s, but I have not played at all since then. And the others, I just never had any desire to do it anymore. I completely lost it. Even my wife will say, "Why don't you go do these?" No, I don't have any desire. And I just became so transfixed with initially with Muay Thai because of the striking arts, and just fascinated by that. But then when I found jiu-jitsu, it went to a whole nother level that I never imagined. I truly never imagined. I had heard about this type of thing where it literally takes over all areas of your life, as far as the discipline and, in kind of I think it sounds hokey, but I guess the lifestyle. But I think more than that, I was challenged physically, I was challenged mentally, but then the community aspect of it just kind of really encapsulated the whole thing for me, in that there were people that were all different ages, but mostly men, and mostly men out of their 20s and probably in their early 30s to gosh, we've got a couple of guys I think that are in their early 60s. So it was just so unique for me personally to have such an interesting group of men who are all there to do the same thing, who are there to bust your chops and give you a hard time, choke you out, hurt you, not purposely, of course, but then to wrap their arm around you and say, this is how I did it, and this is what you need to work on. And again, I just never had anything like that so fascinated me.
I think that's kind of hard for people to kind of wrap their head around anyway. It's hard enough for people that are in it to explain it.
Yes.
Right? To the outsider, they'll see what's going, particularly in striking.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
Definitely Muay Thai.
There's a vast difference between somebody who has done it versus somebody who's never actually hit something or kicked something, or, you could see it immediately, and even the reaction of their hand hitting something or their foot kicking something. But
in terms of just an outsider seeing that, say like you're seeing just, going 50, 60% sparring, maybe there's no elbows, they got some knees in there, got some clinches, and they're teeing off a little bit. Of course, if you're in it, you have an agreement anyway.
Sure.
There is that respect there, right?
Yes.
And okay, let's bring it up or down, whatever it might be. But to the outsider, all they see is, oh my God, this is the most brutal thing I've ever seen. And you call it a community. Yeah. So is it just, and everyone will make this the comparison to, or they make reference to, oh, it's Fight Club.
Yeah,
it's Fight Club, right?
Yes.
I mean, they make marketing on that. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
this is the executives' Fight Club kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
How? And now, granted, there's some people that just they don't want to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
For the person that really wants to, but just isn't there yet, how do you even start broaching that? What do you?
Yeah.
How do you say that this? I mean, show that this is something that's worthwhile, and particularly if it's their child that they were considering putting into this community.
Yeah, I think that. So within my practice, that, like I said, every case is its own. Every person is individualized that I work with. Of course, everybody knows that, but not everybody is necessarily the best fit for a particular martial art, in my opinion. The majority of them, I think, are a good fit for jiu-jitsu, because I think that you can be any height, weight, size. It's just so unique in that way. But sorry, my son was knocking on the door. So if I have somebody that I think is a good fit for one of them, I want to work very hard at personalizing my experiences to them, because I think that ultimately is what allows them to relate to the experience. I think that my buddy, yeah, we got that. I think one of the things that is so intimidating is walking into a gym the first time, but in a lot of ways, it's not that much different than walking into my office. Everybody thinks that anybody who sees someone like me, they're crazy. That's always the stigma that they're going through.
They've labeled themselves officially as crazy. Is that what you're saying?
Or somebody who comes and sees me, that person is crazy. So, you're always obviously fighting that stigma, but I don't know that it's going to be a bad connection, but I don't know that it's all that the anxiety and nerves that it takes to actually go see someone like me. I don't know that it's all that much different than going to the gym for the first time, especially a martial arts gym. I think that a lot of times what we picture, depending on your age, if you're anywhere around my age, you're thinking of, the Karate Kid gym, yes, sensei, right? There's all this aggression and all these guys screaming and being very intimidating. And I have yet to walk into a gym that's anything like that. But we think in pictures, we don't think in words. So the idea of walking into a martial arts gym, it immediately evokes a picture of whatever it may be. It may be fear, it may be aggression, it may be anger. And I don't know that all gyms do a real good job with that. The one that I happened to walk into here when I started jiu-jitsu, and it was great. And they welcomed me and spent time with me, kind of explained the history. And then we got into it. And I think that did a world of good just for my own initial anxieties or nerves of walking into the gym.
Did it take you a while to kind of feel like you're part of the community, or were they just so welcoming that you just fit right in?
I don't remember there being a moment where I went, oh yeah, this is it. I just remember feeling like a high when I left, and everybody being pretty cool with me, and everybody coming up, hey, I'm so and so, and introducing themselves. And then it really, a level of, I guess I would say, of discipline came up for me, in that I determined, listen, I'm going at least 4 days a week, regardless of what happens. Because if nothing else, I really enjoyed the instructor and the way that he simplified a lot of the things, a lot of the concepts. Actually, both instructors, how they simplified the concepts. And then at some point, I started doing some private sessions with one of our instructors who is going to be a black belt here soon. And he was just fascinating. So I had these huge overarching concepts, but I couldn't do the simple. I couldn't shrimp. I couldn't do the simple things, and so he helped me with some of those types of things. But I think the community. I always think it's funny when people say this. It just kind of organically happened. I don't know what it was, but it was like, we're all in this struggle together, but we're all in it together, and you start recognize, hey man, what's going on? And you now people by name and a little bit about their background, and who's, a little loosey goosey is going to smash you because they're struggling also. And, and you get at some point you get choked out, or you almost do. And you're laughing with the guy. And at least I was, because some of these things they would pull on me. I just couldn't even understand how they did it. So I would just start laughing. And, you just learn through the struggle is what I discovered. And then at some point I heard somebody say, the key to jiu-jitsu is you just keep showing up. And so that's what I determined. I'm just going to keep showing up. And I still have that mindset that, I'm just going to keep showing up. And the community has formed around that, I think.
Is there any bit of competition that you feel in there at all? I mean, I don't know. Do you go through are you all training for like tournaments and that type of thing?
No, I'm not. We do have a few guys that, we've got one of the guys, he wrestled at Oklahoma State with Daniel Cormier. Oh. So, I mean, dude's an absolute beast. I mean, he's enormous also. But we've got a number of wrestlers, and you can look at them and go, oh, yeah, you're going to be doing something in a ring and in an octagon. But no, I guess I can never say never, that I'll never try for a tournament. But at this point, no, it's just, now there is a lot of competition. Absolutely. I think that's the majority of people in there would tell you. And if you have any athletic background at all, I think it's natural that it comes up. So yeah, everybody that I go against, I feel like I'm going to try to do everything I can to win. But at the same time, as you know, for our egos, there's probably nothing better than to get squashed, get beat by these people, because, and I think quite truthfully, that's probably helped with my own crap and my own stuff too, is just, getting that ego squashed and coming back and doing it again and doing it again and doing it again. And now, I mean, that's really where confidence is developed, I think, in a human being overall, being unsuccessful, but determining that you're going to keep persevering through whatever the struggle is. And I, like I said, I have never come across something that is so analogous to that, like jiu-jitsu.
How long did it take you to get that point though? Cause I mean, God, I know there are times, and I don't roll much. We do a bit of grapple, mostly clinch work. But I definitely know the feeling of getting my ass beat in one way or another. Yep. And I couldn't even put my finger on when I kind of, got over the hump. But you talk about that, you mentioned it a few times now. It was just, the success comes when you show up.
Yes.
Right? Do you remember a time when, or like, was there a moment when you're like, okay, this is the grind? You just kind of surrendered to it. And then now you have this realization that you can go to.
Yeah. So, the Gracie combatives, all of the different programs in jiu-jitsu have their good parts and bad parts, things that you would change. I think one of the things that Gracie's do so well is they really simplify a lot of it. And then our particular gym, they really don't want you rolling an open mat. I think it's maybe about 6 to 8 months is what they say. It just as not a rule, but generally speaking, I think that, to answer your question, it was when I walked through the door on a Saturday morning, because we have open mat Saturday morning from roughly 10 to 11:30. And so the first time I ever walked into that, I was going, oh geez, I never wrestled or anything. So I didn't know. And they so there's two groups. There's there's combatives, and then there's, oh my God, I can't believe I'm blanking out on it. But then there's there's the higher group, which is blue belts and up. Master Cycle, that's what it is. And so they were giving me a hard time about it one night, and I said, you know what, I'm going to be there tomorrow. And I was just kind of, talking out of my ass. And
because these were like the more advanced folks that would show up for the mat. Okay.
These are the guys that they would destroy everybody. And it was also, but I didn't really have a relationship really with too many of them, but we were out somewhere and they were giving me a hard time. Like, you're going to be there tomorrow. Yep. I'm going to be there tomorrow. Like the whole time going, oh great, I'm going to get destroyed. And so, but I went that next morning, and I went afraid, and I walked in and got my ass just handed to me for an hour and a half to 2 hours straight, and left there like I had just conquered Mount Everett or something. It was just such a tangible high for me. And I remember going home absolutely drenched in sweat and hurting. And my wife was like, how was it? And I was like, I got my ass kicked for 2 hours. It was awesome.
It's awesome.
And the next day I woke up with bruises all over my arms and my legs, and I was just a mess. But and then after that, it was every Saturday, and unless we were out of town or something. But I've missed maybe a handful of times since that time. And somebody said to me one time, Saturday morning is like Christmas morning. Every Saturday is. And I remember going, come on, it's not, I don't know, it's not that extreme. But I know exactly what he's talking about now, because it is. There's a level of excitement. There's a little bit of an anxiety. But, we go in and, you chit chat and you stretch, and then it's on. And you put your mouthpiece in and clinch down on it, and, human chest. Here we go.
What you mentioned just now, that there's a level of anxiety. What do you mean by that?
So I'll get on the psychology side of it a little bit. So everybody, even the best athletes in the world, will still get a level of anxiety. Now, what I suffered from when I was in my teens was a real debilitating anxiety to the point of I would be exhausted before a game even started because I would be so worked up. And I remember consciously trying so many different things to overcome that anxiety. Now it is more of I think a level of you're battling the man across from you. And so, although we know that you're going to tap and nobody's going to try to actually hurt you, there's still a competitive, there's still a confrontational piece to it. There's still I think if you've never held another person and literally tried to do any type of grappling with them, you literally have no clue what it feels like. I mean, we've got guys in our class that are 5'6", that they'll be on top of you and you think a 250-pound man was squashing you. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And so the anxiety, I think, is more a result of the excitement to do it mixed with the confrontational, combative side of it, that we're just going into a battle right now. So I think that for me, that's where it comes from.
Not necessarily fear then.
No, because the first time, absolutely. Maybe even the second time a little bit because of just how it went the first time. But no, I wouldn't say the first time for anybody is going to be full of fear. Again, because you just don't know what you don't know. And so all you see is big guys rolling around, somebody's face turning red or somebody, looking like they're being manhandled. And until you've been in that arena, or I think it was one time my kids came with me, and we have there's like glass where like there's seats on one side, and so you can watch. And my kids were watching me, and I was on the bottom the whole time, and somebody was on top of me, and they were like, "Daddy, you looked like you were getting beat up." And so what they don't recognize is, of course, in jiu-jitsu, being on the bottom doesn't mean you're getting beat up at all. In fact, in a lot of ways, it can be advantageous. But I think it's working through all of that, your own stuff, like being on top versus being on bottom, bigger guy versus smaller guy, this belt versus this belt. These are all these frames that we look at life as. You see the big guy, well, don't mess with the big guy because he's a big guy and I'm a little guy, or if somebody gets on top of you, you're in trouble. These are all psychological frames that we all have. And in that arena, in that space, all that goes away. Guy Ritchie said one time, your currency in life means nothing when you're on the mat. The only currency you have on the mat is what you have on the mat. So it doesn't matter your job. It doesn't matter how big, small you are. None of that matters. It just matters what's going on right there in the present moment, which is the person right across from you is going to try to destroy you as much as you're going to try to destroy them.
Do you have any moments where, if you think back now, where it was like it was a proud moment for you? What's a highlight of particularly in your BJJ training for you? Is there one moment that really sticks out to you so far?
I don't know. I mean, have I tapped people? Yes, yeah. But quite honestly, those are few and far between. I think I don't have one moment. I think more than anything, it's the accumulation of all the moments in regards to just knowing that, because there was a time, 6 months ago where I was demoralized. I felt really demoralized because, again, you're getting your ass kicked so much and it's like, golly, am I regressing somehow?
It's not like this constant improvement this way. It's like a roller coaster.
Up and down, back a little bit and then a little bit forward and then down. Yeah. And so I was really struggling. I remember one night I was driving home and I was like, God. And I've never, which is weird. And I've been doing this probably close to 2 years. I've never thought about quitting, but I was really demoralized because I just didn't feel like I was progressing, which is very common with this. But I remember I took one night off and I made excuses. Well, I got something going on, whatever. But then I went that Saturday and it was just for me, it was a hurdle. It was a personal hurdle. It was my own mindset hurdle. It was somewhat of a watershed moment just to say, you know what? You really feel like you suck at something right now and you're getting destroyed at something right now. And it's winning and there's a part of you that feels like a loser and like you're not doing anything, but it doesn't matter. All that stuff doesn't matter because you just got to keep showing up. And that's part of the process again, which is why I just think it's so analogous to life because that's what life does. It beats you up. It surrenders you. It taps you out so many times. And, unfortunately, so many of the people that I work with succumb to that. But then once they figure it out and they can push through it, it's what's on the other side of it. It's all part of the process, right? The goal is for everybody. We all want a black belt. I'm not going to lie and say I don't want a black belt. Of course I do. But the longer I do this, I do start to recognize more and more that it's the process. That's the best part. Because at the end of the day, it's still just going to be a belt that you tie around.
Well, that's an interesting thing that you bring up with that because I definitely have my thoughts on rank and belts and that, and of course it's every school they approach it differently. Mm-hmm. But aside from the belt aspect of it, how are there ways for you to measure how you're doing? Because you talk about it's a back and forth, up and down. Maybe you're going backwards, maybe you're going a little bit forward. So, again, from the outside in, it's like, how do you know you're making progress? Mm-hmm. In particular, again, for kids or for people that are not experienced with that, embracing kind of the grind, right? Embracing that process.
Absolutely.
Because that in and of itself, I think once you get there, I think it's rare, and I think you could agree with me there, that people get to that point where I love this process, right? Yeah. It may suck, it may be awesome for a split second, know, but then it's just the motion. So it's that whole thing, and loving the chess match, right? But aside from that, particularly if you haven't embraced that yet, how do you is there a way to measure whether you're getting better or not? If you are actually improving or not?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think first and foremost, you got to have an instructor who's transparent and authentic with you. You know, I think there's a balance between encouraging and also being assertive to say, no, you really need to work on these areas. But at the same time, I'm going to do that with you. I'm not going to allow you to just try to figure this out on your own. I'm going to work with you.
As opposed to what though? What's the other side? Because that just makes complete sense to me. What you're saying,
yeah.
Like who wouldn't do that? You know,
well,
wouldn't all instructors do that?
Yeah, no, not all instructors do that, and that's why you have a lot of McDojos and all these weird gyms. That I think at the same time, one of the things that I so enjoyed was the camaraderie that I started to build within that community. So one of the guys that I have always really enjoyed sparring with, he's much larger than me. He's 6'6", I think, and probably, I don't even know how much he weighs, but he's huge. So theoretically, we shouldn't be working together, but at the same time, he can challenge me in ways that nobody else can. So a lot of just screwing up and you know, messing around and rolling and working on positions and really breaking them down to the minutia. And you know, part of the Gracie program is we videotape, so you get to watch them and things like that. And I think that was very helpful for me. You know, I'm not going to lie. I know they say don't focus on belts. I'd be lying if I said it. Listen, getting from a white belt to a blue belt was one of my biggest accomplishments in life, truly. And I'm not trying to be, you know, theatrical about it. It was a big accomplishment for me. But at the end of the day, it's still just a belt. You know, I rarely wear it out in public anymore. And
it's my tie today, you know.
Yeah.
Hey, that's a nice color on there.
Yeah. But I do. I think we all know it. Everybody, we get wrapped up in the belts. But I think more importantly for me, it was maybe not getting tapped out as quick, maybe getting out of positions that I wasn't able to last weekend. You know, it was, you know, I've heard a lot of people talk about, you know, they journal. So like they journal what they learned that day and things like that. I think all those things are very beneficial. I will tell you a lot of times, because on a Saturday, you may roll, I don't know, I'm just throwing a number out there, let's say 15 to 20 times. So it's hard for me to always remember how this person tapped me or that person or anything. But I will probably I will remember more often, did I get top position? Did I pass his guard? And those types of things. Like there's a few guys there that are just absolutely manhandle me. So at that point, now it's making it a little simpler. Did I get to side control and hold them down for a while? You know, it's not about did I submit them or anything like that? Because most of the time I'm not going to. And if you're looking at it in just regard, you either submitted them or you're not, you're going to be very unsuccessful, and it's probably going to add up, and you're going to beat yourself up, and you probably won't last very long.
It's kind of like you just take the wins where you can get them, I suppose.
Yeah,
you know, and then ultimately you can't keep score of those either.
No,
you know?
No, and you know,
have the tick marks in there.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I only got this many tick marks. I wanted this many.
Exactly. You know, and I used to say, you know what, if I only get tapped 20 times today, it's going to be a banner day. You know, and but part of that is serious. You know, I don't want to get it tapped as much, but if I do, then I'm going to ask the guy, well, how did you do that? If I didn't recognize it, you know, immediately. And I think for someone like me or anybody that is newer and you're working with a lot of older belts, don't be afraid to ask, be assertive and saying, how did you do that? You know, and because so far, at least in my short experience, everybody's been very cool to, you know, and wanting to give out guidance and show you how they did something. You know, that's what I have also found unique about this. And I know it's not like this everywhere, but at our place, I've never encountered anybody who was like holding back the secrets or whatever you want to say. Yeah. Like, no, I'm not going to tell you, you're not the right belt yet. No one does. Yeah.
Interesting. You talk a lot about tapping. What has changed for you since the first time you tapped to when you tap nowadays? Because I can see like that's a journey in and of itself.
Yeah.
Right.
So a couple of things. Clearly, the first one being I'm able to recognize things a little bit better. So whereas before a submission may have come out of nowhere, in our head instructor, he still does that. He's just unreal. But for the most part, if there's nothing else, I'm able to recognize patterns now a little bit better, where I can see when they're coming, versus before where they would just come out of nowhere. As things like if they're on the back, well, clearly they're going to try to take your neck most of the time. Those things are obvious, but it could be, I'm trying to think of something random, but anyway, I think now it's just a matter of being better able to recognize the patterns. It doesn't mean that I always get out of them now, but I can recognize how they got into that, as opposed to just going, I have no clue how you got there. So I think that's probably the biggest thing for me. I may still tap. I probably tap maybe a third less than I did before. That's probably being generous, maybe a quarter less, but at least at this point, I'm encouraged by my own ability just to see the patterns a lot of the times now.
I mean, and I know it would vary from submission to submission, situation to situation, but do you find that you are more willing to kind of work through it a bit more than you were at the beginning?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So if I'm in an armbar, I'm not as quick to tap now. Well, I should say this against specific people, because there can be people that not necessarily, they're not trying to hurt you, but they may jerk it a little bit more severe than somebody else. And so you got to be careful, or leg locks or anything like that. I mean, we just had a guy who tore his ACL because he turned the wrong way, and it's brutal. You feel terrible for the guy. But at the same time, that helped me to know what not to do. So, yeah, I think that there's definitely specific positions where I'm not as quick to tap. Because here's the thing that I have discovered from jiu-jitsu. The anxiety, okay, so you work through your anxiety of just walking into the gym. Then you work through your anxiety of being manhandled by somebody. But then you're constantly working on your anxiety, like if you're smaller or you've got a big guy on top of you who's literally smothering you. How do you handle that? Because there were times where I tapped just from somebody being on top of me, and smashing your face, and putting a lot of weight on you. It sounds ridiculous if you've never done it. Get underneath somebody who knows what they're doing and knows how to move their body, and you will tap very quickly. So that's one of those other things. So now I don't think that's happened in a long time, something like that. You just learn to deal with the pressure. You learn to deal with the uncomfortable nature of it. You learn to deal with the anxiety of, oh my God, I can't breathe. And you make little incremental moves to help you get out of what seems like a extremely difficult position.
You learn better, over time, I guess, like what your limitations are. Yeah. Right. And like your own patterns, particularly what's going on in here, right? What's going on with your emotions, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm telling you, that's the biggest one I think for people, is the idea that any size man or woman can get on top of you, and just through some simple movements can make you feel like there's a gorilla sitting on your chest. And unless you've done that and tried to breathe normally, you literally have no clue what that's like.
There's something you can't describe.
No, you just have to feel it, Yeah. And I'll tell you, here's the other good thing about our gym. I shouldn't say we, because that's not me, but they make a point of not allowing those things to happen when somebody first walks in, because if you go through something like that your first day, you won't come back. More than likely you won't. And so that's why, they take the time before you get into open mat situations where it's open sparring and things like that, because you're not ready. And it's not a good way to learn the art that way.
So are you exclusively BJJ now, or are you still doing some striking as well?
Well, I have my Muay Thai bag in our basement.
Okay. But as far as like training at a gym or anything?
Yeah, no, I really, I don't have the time. I mean, as it is, oh gosh, I'm at the gym. It doesn't sound like very much, but probably at least 6 to 7 hours a week, on top of full-time career and do my own podcast and things like that. And that's 3 days a week. So no, unfortunately, I don't do any of the striking outside of what I do downstairs.
Yeah. It's a different dynamic. Absolutely. Yes. In any case, right? So, yeah. And definitely, I think it's something like, for me, I mean, I'm all about striking. That's just I've just been doing it for so long.
Sure.
And definitely speaks differently though than when even I'm just getting into clinches and doing takedowns. Very different, very different game of chess.
Yes.
One game of chess to a different game of chess.
Yeah. And you watch things like the UFC and stuff like that, and see a stand up clinch, and you go, "Gosh, they're just hugging each other." Get into it with somebody like that, and you'll recognize how much work they're putting in and how exhausting that kind of stuff is. Yeah, I mean, you just don't have any clue until you've done it.
And then we're talking about even inches, half an inch of a movement of your opponent, right? Yeah. And it's like, well, not only do you have to manage your energy and your balance, you got something else here that's coming. Their energy, their balance. What can you do with that? How can you redirect it if possible, right?
Yep.
So, yeah. Good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Dude. Ryan, man, this was awesome.
Yeah.
God, freaking love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to have to do this again.
And, I think that, like I said, if I can't wait for the day I can get my son and my daughter into jiu-jitsu. I think one of the things is that jiu-jitsu is phenomenal for girls. I think that because, unfortunately, there's a lot of men who are going to try to take advantage of women. And one of the things that I have so enjoyed, like Gracie's jiu-jitsu has the bully proof program, which is great because we know that bullying is out of control, but it's good because it teaches both the bully and the victim and the same things. And so it's really great. But, I really look forward to the day when my kids hopefully will want to do it, because I think that there's a level, arrogance and confidence are two totally different things in my opinion. And I think that jiu-jitsu provides a level of confidence that a lot of other things don't. And it teaches you control and discipline and, how to subdue somebody without actually hurting them, and God forbid my son or daughter ever have to get into a situation. I want them to know that they can protect themselves, by any means necessary. It doesn't mean they're not going to be afraid, but I want them to at least know that they can protect themselves if need be.
They have options.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Nice. If you want to look at any of my information, you can go to ryancragg.org. So RYANCRAGG.org. I'm also doing a podcast called The Human Chess Project. So yesterday I talked to a guy about CBD, since I live in Kansas now, and CBD just got legalized there. So got to talk to a Harvard-trained MD there. But yeah, go check that out, and would love to have a discussion about that. And maybe we'll get you on mine over on that side. But at a minimum, I definitely want to come back here and talk with you again.
Awesome, brother. Awesome. Well, take care, man.
All right. See you, buddy.
Folks, that's it for this episode of the Everyday Fighter podcast. Hope you enjoyed that interview with Ryan as much as I enjoyed talking with him about it. You can see really just there's a lot of growth in going down that road of martial arts, particularly in BJJ, as Ryan had mentioned earlier. And, maybe something that's worth exploring for you. Again, that's it, folks. This is Philip with the Everyday Fighter podcast. Talk to you next time.